Can Kinshasa retake control of eastern Congo? The M23 rebel group has staged a violent takeover of two major cities and vast mineral-rich territory. They're backed by Rwanda and say they are protecting local Tutsis, but what else is driving one of Africa's longest-running conflicts? I'm Andrea Sankin. Today's Newsmaker is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a region blighted by multiple rebel armies, a diverse array of ethnic groups, and some of the most valuable minerals in the world. Now, with the purported backing of neighboring Rwanda, M23 rebels have taken control of the eastern Congo's two biggest cities, Goma and Bukavu. Each is home to more than 1 million people. Thousands of them have been killed and hundreds of thousands have fled their homes in just this latest escalation. And though the EU and African Union have urged the M23 to disarm, the movement instead appears to be gaining strength, with ever more disaffected government troops joining M23 ranks. So can Kinshasa gain back what it's lost? Or could Rwanda be poised to change the very landscape of the region? Here's a look.
A deadly explosion tears through a rebel victory rally in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, killing at least 11 people and injuring dozens more. The government in Kinshasa blames a foreign army. The M23 blames Kinshasa. The explosions come at a critical moment as the Congolese army suffers heavy defeats at the hands of the M23 rebel group, a militia that has haunted eastern Congo for more than a decade. M23 first emerged in 2012, claiming to defend the rights of Congolese Tutsis, but the group has left a trail of massacres and forced recruitment ever since its founding.
We fled and left everything behind. I didn't even take any clothes. We have no food. We are on the verge of starvation. The children are hungry and we have no water or electricity. When someone gets sick, we have no medicine. Please help us.
DR Congo's government accuses Rwanda of backing the rebels, using them as a proxy force to project power into Congo's resource-rich east.
The
Rwandan Defense Forces, in support of their M23 puppet, are continuing their terrorist enterprise on our territory, sowing terror and desolation among our populations.
Rwanda has always denied the allegations, but recently adopted a more defensive posture, saying fighting near the border is a threat to its security. Rwanda first sent troops into Congo in the late 1990s, triggering two wars that pulled in half a dozen African countries. Those conflicts officially ended in fragile peace deals, but they left behind a patchwork of militias, turning eastern DRC into one of the most volatile regions in the world.
The security and humanitarian situation in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has reached alarming levels. According to figures from the Ministry of Health, since January 2025, the conflict has caused the death of more than 7,000 Congolese, including more than 2,500 bodies buried without being identified, and more than 1,500 still lying around in morgues.
Since January, the rebels have seized dozens of towns and villages, advancing further into North and South Kivu provinces. The violence has displaced a further 500,000 people, the highest figure ever recorded in DR Congo. And as the toll mounts, far from the spotlight, the people of eastern DRC face a crisis with no end in sight.
So where does the cycle of violence in eastern Congo stand now with these M23 advances? Well, joining me now to debate that and much more are from Pretoria, geopolitical analyst and former South African diplomat to Rwanda, Botsang Moiloa. From Leicester, UK, Michael Tshibangu is a lawyer and advisor to former DRC presidential candidate Moise Katumbi. And from London, chief campaigner for Save the Congo, Vava Tampa. Thanks all so much for being with me. Let's first get everyone's take on the most recent developments, especially in light of the explosions in Bukavu. Rebel leaders are blaming Kinshasa, but the government says it's a foreign entity behind the blast, likely Burundi. even though their troops were actually supposed to have left the DRC. So Michael Tshibangu, I'll start with you. Can you give us a clearer picture of who's responsible for what now and what is driving this latest escalation?
Well, at this point, you have the M23 that is looking to gain ground because they want to negotiate with the Congolese government, and the government is unwilling and doesn't want to negotiate with them. I think that this is a way of putting pressure on the government in order to force their hand, if I can say.
To force the government's hand?
Yeah, so that the negotiation will finally take place. Because they've been asking for negotiation, and the Congolese government has so far said that it will not negotiate directly with the M23, that it considers as a group of terrorists.
Okay, let me ask Vava if that's a simple explanation, but thorough enough.
Look, Andrea, your viewers would be aware the current crisis in Congo is the responsibility of the Kigali government, President Kagame of Rwanda. All the killings that we are witnessing, all the violence, all the displacement, all the rape that we have also seen are the sole responsibility of President Kagame in Rwanda. The evidence are really clear here, Andrea. Without guns, troops, and money and support from Kigali, the M23 could not have killed and raped and displaced as many Congolese as they have. Similarly, without guns, without money, without support from the West, from the UK, from the US, from the German, from the EU, Kigali, President Kagame of Rwanda, could not have continued to fuel and abate so much violence in Congo. Everything that is happening in Congo at the moment, it's the sole responsibility of President Kagame of Rwanda, and it ought to be held accountable, hopefully by the ICC, and I want to see it soon.
But Vava, I mean, do you really think the government is innocent in all of this?
But what we have seen over the past 4 years, since 2021, we have not seen the Congolese army or the Congolese government attacking or displacing people. What we have seen since 2021, when the M23 re-emerged again, we have seen evidence provided by the UN, provided by Human Rights Watch, provided by Amnesty International, that shows clearly evidence of troops from the Rwandan Defense Forces in Congo killing, raping, looting, displacing people alongside the M23 since 2021. Before 2021, and I challenge anyone to bring me evidence of anywhere in which the Congolese government, the Congolese army, were by themselves committing violence against the Congolese people. Any unit of the Congolese army that has ever committed violence against the Congolese people, if you check their history, Andrea, what you would find is that unit used to be a militia gang that, under some sort of pistols in the past, became part of the Congolese army, but continued to commit human rights violations and war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Okay.
That is the situation on the ground.
With impunity, as you said many times before. But let me ask Botsang, if you agree with Vava there, that most everything really is in Rwanda's hands at this point, that for as far as this latest round of violence is especially concerned, it's Kigali's control.
Well, good afternoon, colleagues, and let me differ a little bit with Mr. V there, that it is solely the responsibility of Kigali. The situation in the DRC, it is multifaceted. It has a lot of hands involved from various regions of the world and not only from the Great Lakes. I am not going to sit and say Rwanda is not involved in the DRC situation or any other country, including my own country, South Africa, for that matter. But if we are going to be undiplomatic about it and start pointing fingers when we are supposed to be engaging in a negotiated settlement for peace sake, and we are creating and exacerbating the problem, we are not resolving it. I have said various platforms, and many times I have said any engagement and or negotiations in the DRC or for the DRC that is going to exclude the M23 movement, whether they are being called rebels, organization, or movement, it's immaterial at the moment, but they are a force to be reckoned. They are participants in this war or this violence, and we can't shut them out. This attitude of the Congolese government saying they are not going to sit on the table with M23, it shows the sign of a non-caring government. When there's a conflict, Andrea and colleagues, you must have all the parties that are involved in a conflict on the table. You can't leave party or organization like M23 out, while they are actually the main cause of the violence in the DRC. So shutting them out, I think it's not going to help the situation. It is good that all the other armed forces are starting to leave. South Africa is out. Burundi is supposed to be gone. Rwanda, they've put the conditions on when and how they will go out. But the DRC government has to talk to the M23 and the peace negotiators and interveners, whether from SADC or from the United Nations, they will have to bring the DRC government and the M23 to the table. So I don't want to be pointing, fingers. The bombing that has happened in the last few hours.
Vava, let me ask Vava quickly, though, because if I'm reading your facial expressions correctly, you don't think anyone should be engaging with the M23. They don't deserve a seat at the table.
They definitely do not deserve a seat at the table. Look, there is two schools of thought in South Africa. There is one school of thought, which is the Katumbi school of thought, and it sounds to me that Botsang belongs to that school of thought. Those are school of thought of people who are fellow travelers of the Kigali government, who make apologies from Kigali, who, rather than pointing fingers directly, as evidence suggests, that Kigali is sending troops and guns, which is aiding violence and abating the killings and the raping of the Congolese people, they will try to make all sorts of argument and apologies for Kigali. And there is a second school of thought, which is the Pan-African school of thought. That is a school of thought in South Africa that is standing with the Congolese people, recognizing that without Congo, Africa is not going to take off. And the reason Congo remains on its knees, and here I'm not making excuse for the Congolese government malpractice and corruptions, but if Congo continues in this state, because the West continue to fuel violence via Kigali, giving Rwanda guns and money and support and training to kill Congolese people.
Okay. Let me just, I'd really like to get Michael's thoughts on this as well, because we know Kigali could actually now face EU sanctions alongside demands to withdraw its troops and actually stop its support of the M23. So where do you see that momentum going? Is it a major step forward to see the EU actually this close to instituting sanctions on Kigali?
I think it's a major step forward if it can lead to a ceasefire on the ground, because missing the point that the population is actually the one that is paying the heaviest price. People are being displaced. We have millions of people that are displaced. People are dying. Women are being raped. And this cycle has been going on for the past 30 years. I think it comes a point when we have to say enough is enough. And all parties involved, the international community needs to apply that pressure, whether it's on Kigali or from the Congolese government or M23, so that they'll find a peaceful solution to this problem. When I say about a peaceful solution, we need to look at the root causes of this problem that has been going on for a very long time. Every time the war will start, there will be some talk of negotiation. And then again, after some years, you have the same thing. This is not the first time that the M23, backed by Rwanda, has attacked Congo. So they claim to have grievances. Rwanda, for example, will say that we prefer threatened because Congo supports the FDLR. So the question is, how much of that is true? Do the FDLR really pose a threat to Rwanda? Do they pose an existential threat to Rwanda, or is that exaggerated? So I think that will need to be looked into, because it's one of the pretexts or things that Rwanda claims that forces them to support the M23. But on the other hand, you have the Congolese government as well that is saying Rwanda continues to destabilize us. This is not the first rebellion or rebel group that Rwanda has supported against Congo. It's been going on for many years. And we need to look at that as well. What role is Rwanda playing in Congo?
Okay, but
is Rwanda backing rebel? Is they looting? And then pressure needs to be applied accordingly so as to put an end to this, a definite end. Otherwise, we'll just be beating around the bush. And then 3 years from now, we'll be talking about the same thing again.
Okay, but I mean, I'll come back to Botsang, because speaking of the root causes that Michael is saying have to be addressed, we now have, the European Union reviewing its agreement or memorandum of understanding with Rwanda over critical minerals. And many are asking what role that or any potential deal on minerals is actually playing behind the scenes when you look at what international or foreign action is being taken in this conflict.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, you know what I wanted to say. If we talk of the root cause of the fight in the Congo, it didn't start only during the independence of Rwanda or when the RPF moved in. The battle of the Congo is the battle of the minerals in Congo. And like I said at the beginning, there are many other parties that are involved, including the USA, some countries of Europe. For the mere fact that Rwanda can get into mineral deals, the minerals that they do not have with some countries in the EU, and those countries are not questioning the source of those minerals. It shows that how many more hands are involved into this whole thing. We cannot also underestimate the fact that Rwanda, indeed, they are occupying the eastern part of the Congo, the Goma. I worked there, I was accredited to that area, and Rwanda has been having one excuse, legitimate or not. They've been having one excuse to say the Interahamwe or the rebels from Rwanda who are wanted for the 1994 genocide, the Congolese government is housing them. And I am saying if that is the case, the Congolese government must release those people. Then Rwanda must move out of Rwanda and be on the borderline. But there's also another element, Andrea. We must always remember that the M23 movement are not Rwandese, even if they are supported or alleged to be supported by Rwandese. They are the Congolese. Now, if you are a government and you've got a so-called rebel group or a resistance movement are taking and killing citizens in your country, the first point of entry is to engage those people. You cannot, even if they are being armed by Rwanda, but engage with them to save the life of people. And we have seen in the last 2 days how some of the police forces in the DRC drowned their troops, left their offices, and joined sides with M23. So these are Congolese. The Congolese problem must primarily be resolved by the Congolese people themselves. External parties must come under the umbrella of SADC or EAC or the UN, and it must not be a military, including Rwanda, it must not be military. Therefore, all I'm advocating for, and I'm saying is, engagements are very important. When I was Thabo Mbeki's envoy to Kigali, we managed temporarily, for that matter, to silence the guns in the DRC. And I can tell you what had happened there. There were no military interventions from outside. There were diplomatic engagements. And the then relationship of President Kagame and the then president of the DRC, Joseph Kabila, was cordial. That's why they could talk. Now we have hostility between Tshisekedi and Kagame. That's another problem. We have hostility between Kagame and the president of Burundi. That's another problem. All must come to the table to engage for the benefit of the DRC.
There are so many layers of complexity here, but Vava, I'll come back to you because do you think Rwanda should at all feel threatened by those Hutus who, first of all, escaped to Eastern Congo after the Rwandan civil war? Does that former Hutu fighter presence justify in any way the existence of the M23? And you have to speak as well to those soldiers that are now defecting, Congolese soldiers that are defecting to the M23 and fighting effectively in Rwanda's interest.
Andrea, I think both Michael and Botsang simply have no clue when it comes to the subject. Facts are sacred and comments are welcome. But when you're making comments, your comments ought to be based in history. When people talk about the Congolese government somehow or Congo housing the inter-army, the question I ask them is quite simple. If Rwanda's troops in Congo are there to fight the inter-army, what are they doing in Goma? What are they doing in Bukavu? What are they doing in Uvira? What is that to do with the killings of Congolese civilians, the raping of women that we have witnessed, the looting of Congolese minerals? This is nothing to do with inter-army. And the Congolese government, and I'm one of their first critics, have in many times in the past worked with the Rwandan government in joint military forces to flush out the inter-army. There isn't any threat at all to Kigali by the inter-army in Congo, if there is any inter-army in Congo for that matter. So that alibi, which continues to be advanced by people who are making apologies for Kigali, like your two guests, it's a baseless argument. Again, when it comes to troops from the Congolese government or the Congolese army deflecting into M23, you need to remember, Andrea, and your viewers will remember this. This crisis didn't start today. If you go back in 1998, the M23 used to be known as RCD. And RC, they signed a peace deal with the Congolese government, and they joined the Congolese army, only to create another rebellion, and they renamed themselves as CNDP. That was in 2006. In 2006, that CNDP again signed another peace deal with the Congolese government, only to defect again, to rename themselves as M23, with James Kabarebe, the Minister of Security in Rwanda, the head of the Rwandan army, as their chief operating officer. And that is not something I am saying, that is something which the UN, the US, the UK have explained and clarified.
Can I respond?
The same malicious
Vava. Yeah, the clock is against us, and I need to let both respond. But Michael, let me start with you. It is really your turn. I mean, what do you make of Vava's accusation that you just don't have a good enough understanding of what is happening in the region?
I think he's not listening. Rwanda is claiming that the FDLR is a threat. Now, the question is that true or not? That's what I'm saying. That you need to look at that to see whether Rwanda what Rwanda is saying is true or is false, or is it an exaggeration or just a pretext. I have not said that Rwanda is right to say that, but that's what they are saying. So to solve the problem, any problem that there is, we have to look at what role is Rwanda playing. They claim that there's a threat from Congo. Is that threat legitimate? What are the UN reports saying about what is happening in Congo? If you look at the UN reports, particularly the reports of the group of experts, they're very clear. They're saying Rwanda is in DRC, Rwanda is supporting the M23, and there's no doubt about that. But on the other part, when you continue to read the UN, even the UN resolution that has been recently passed, there is a part of the resolution that is saying Rwanda needs to withdraw its troops. Another part that is asking some element of the Congolese army to stop the collaboration with the FDLR. How much of that is true? So I don't know if you can say that it's not true or it's true, but it would have to be addressed one way or another. It has to be proven. If Vava saying it is not true, that would have to be proven, say to Rwanda that you claim to be that the FDLR is a threat, but in actual fact, it is not a threat because now you are occupying territory. You are going way beyond even the places where the FDLR are not. And what we are not seeing you disarming any FDLR. So that could be an argument that could be used to show to Rwanda that what you claim they are FDLR, but on the ground, even where you are occupying, we are not seeing you taking action against the FDLR. But that argument is there, whether it's valid or not. That's what I'm thinking that when we look at a global solution, that would have to be looked into. And it would have to be shown to Rwanda that that is not true. Or they claim that the other claims that, okay, M23, for example, they claim to be discriminated against. How much of that is true? And then again, that will have to be looked at to find out whether it is not just something that they use as a pretext to lose Congo, or whether there is actually a valid claim. So I'm trying to look from this from an objective perspective, as in what all parties are saying, and then and find out how much of what they are saying is true, and then, if possible, sanction those who are playing a negative role, as it has started already.
Okay, Botsang, I can see you agree, but quickly, I mean, we only have 2.5 minutes left, so. You had brought up the issue as well that the DRC is one of those rare African nations that has dual membership in two key organizations, SADC, Southern African Development Community, and the East African Community. This war could be potentially destabilizing to both. So what are the implications of this escalating ever further and destabilizing two core organizations in the region?
Fortunately, Andrea, I do not think the two core economic regional bodies will be destabilized. And I will tell you why. If you look at the meeting that happened about 3 weeks ago in Dar es Salaam or in Arusha, it was the two regional bodies meeting. There is no confrontation or differences between these two bodies that the DRC belong to on how the situation in Rwanda, in the DRC should be resolved. Actually, there is consensus between the two regional bodies. But what could lead to is this war or spilling into the neighboring countries of the Great Lakes, Burundi, Rwanda, and as well as Uganda. But, you know, when we come to the issue of sanctions, Andrea, my position is even if the UK...
Okay, it looks like we've lost Botsang. So, Vava, I'll give you the last minute to finish your thoughts.
Look, Andrea, when people make the argument that somehow there is interim in Congo, that the Congolese government is supporting those, that is a fake argument, and it's a dangerous one. If there is any truth to that, and I challenge Michael to point me or to point your viewers to any UN report, any report by Human Rights Watch, any report by Amnesty International over the past 4 years or 5 years that shows a shred of evidence of such a thing. So why continue to advance an argument in which there is no evidence at all? And the reason Michael's advancing that argument is because he belongs to a political party that finds it difficult, it's political leader Moise Katumbi finds it difficult to blame Kigali for the killings in Congo. And Michael's continuously repeating the same line of thought. The only solution to this crisis, Andrea, is an end to the impunity, the creation of an international criminal tribunal for Congo to address the impunity at the root of the situation.
Okay.
We have tried
let me give Michael a final 15 seconds, though, just to respond. Michael, 15 seconds, please.
But he's not listening. The UN report says that Rwanda is in DRC. That's what the report says. You have part of the report that also says some element of the FARDC as collaborating with the FDLR. It's not me that wrote the report. These reports are there. Whether he's saying that what they are saying in the UN report is not true, that's another argument. But they're not what the report is saying. To come and to attack somebody who's basing himself on UN reports, it's just I think he's talking too much instead of listening to the argument that I made.
Okay, unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off there, Michael. We're very much over time for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists so much for being with us. Unfortunately, we lost Botsang at the end there, but thank you all so much, and our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.